Parochial vicar here at St. Patrick's. I'm very new. I was only ordained June 6th, and so I've only had quit counting. And so my time at Dickinson is extremely limited because of my responsibilities here. But so I've only been there a few months, like this first semester, really, and so I don't really know. To be honest, I have some sense of the campus, but not a great strong sense because I've really only been there 3 months. But I love the Catholics on campus, so that's all that matters.
I think some of you know me. My name is Father Dwight Schleylein. I am campus minister at Shippensburg University and pastor of the parish down there. And of course, I used to be in Father Bender's spot here for 4 years. Had a great time here, and I look forward to this discussion. So,
well, let's open by asking, what is the climate in particular at the universities, but even in your own parishes? What is the climate as far as life issues, as far as that goes?
well, I'm eating my delicious Dorito. I've having had the perspective here in Carlisle and the perspective in Shippensburg, my sense is that the Shippensburg University tends to be more open to the pro-life message than what I experienced at Dickinson. When I came there, we already had we have a week-long pro-life activities every semester, which I think we do a very good job of. Katie, thank you. It's a tradition that was already there. It's not something I started. And they're very simple and direct in how they do this. They, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, but they'll have a table outside of the Cub or the library or somewhere, a big traffic area, and they just give cupcakes out to people saying, what's the sentence that you say? To celebrate someone who didn't have a chance to have a birthday. Yeah, to celebrate somebody who didn't have a chance to have a birthday. You know, it's a statement like that, right, Roxanne? Is that right? Yeah. That really says a lot, and they walk away hearing that and have to think about what that means, because we don't use the word abortion or anything like that. It's like to celebrate somebody who didn't have a birthday. And then there's another thing that we do, which is a similar direct message like that. Glad you were born, right? That's something else that we say. We're glad you were born. And it's not a very hostile environment, really. At least I don't perceive it that way. There's some areas of the campus where it's a little less accepted. And I remember looking at the campus newspaper, and the abortion topic came up, and I think I counted about 10 to 12, I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think it was like 10 to 12 letters to the editor about abortion, and about 7, it was like a simple majority. So if it was 12, it was like 7 or 8 were pro-life, and the rest of them were more pro-choice, which I just was like, wow, that's kind of amazing. So as Beth was saying, we're winning. We're winning. I'll let Father Bender talk about
Dickinson. Okay, I've only been there 4 months, so my sense is, though, Smith, and you can counteract me on this if you'd like. She's my Dickinson rep. But Dickinson in proportionality is extremely small compared to Shippensburg. So we have maybe 2,000 students, maybe a little more than 2,000, something like that. It's about 600 a class. Now this freshman class is the largest freshman class, has over 700. But it is also the largest class of self-identifying Catholics. They have over 100, and there's about 117 students of the freshman class who have self-identified as Catholics, which means on their application they filled out that they are Roman Catholic. According to statistics that I've heard, that's the largest percentage of any class in a very, very, very long time. That makes me feel very good. Now, of those 117, how many are coming to Mass every Sunday? Maybe half. No kidding. Like, maybe around half. I mean, we get about 50 to 80 students on a Sunday at Mass, which I am highly excited about. But, so again, we're a smaller market. We're a very overly liberal market. We're a very, because we're a small, private, liberal college that's extremely ridiculously expensive, we're going to draw kids who are topic passionate. So as hot topics rotate in the media and the press, we become susceptible to that on campus. So the pro-life discussion really, my guess is that it's probably a higher pro-abortion campus and a higher anti-death penalty campus, just because those are pretty hot topics, and the leniency is to be more liberal on those topics than. Now, of the Catholic community, I think we're pretty strong in the Catholic community on what we believe. We have good Catholics at Dickinson who are strong in their beliefs and outspoken in their beliefs, and that makes me very happy to see that. Could I see more? Could I see more of it? I'd love to see more of it, but I think for the most part, the Catholics on campus are pretty awesome. So.
Okay, so I'll take two questions. One would be, in general, not just to the Catholic students, but in general, what are some ways that, and this may be harder for Father Don since he's so new to Dickinson, but what are some of the ways that you've extended yourselves in terms of the pro-life message, and are there any success stories that you can tell? So I would think that might involve just like a specific student in crisis. Is there a story that you could share with us?
I've never had, and I wish I've had this opportunity. I wish I would have had this opportunity, but I've never had the opportunity of a girl in pregnancy, in a crisis pregnancy, come to me for help. I would love that opportunity, but I've never had it. It seems that there's so many different directions I could go with this. And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe I'm not approachable enough or something. Maybe I need to examine my conscience and pray about that. But my sense out there is that that type of discussion, if a girl's in a crisis pregnancy, is going to be something that they talk with their most closest friends about, and they're not going to talk about outside of that. I've extended myself in the sense that, well, first of all, I've supported what's already going on at the university with these Respect Life initiatives. I've also preached about it. Most of the people like it, and some of the people don't. And I've kind of poured my heart out about it. And it seems that good things have resulted from that, at least in the parish. I think our pro-life group in the parish is very galvanized right now and excited. And part of it is and I think this maybe is something that needs to be said in here is a lot of this is about discerning our place in God's cause. Like, what does he? In what areas does he want you to, like, I can't do something about every possible life issue. I can't I can't serve at the homeless shelter and do Rachel's Vineyard and do this and do every euthanasia. And none of us is going to be able to devote ourselves in any adequate manner to every single justice issue that's out there. I would love to do that, but we're not able to do that. And I have had to kind of discern in prayer, what am I called to? And there's been several initiatives that I've been called to, and it's not always what I want to do per se. I've been called to help with Rachel's Vineyard. Do we know what Rachel's Vineyard is? I hope we do. Anyone not know what Rachel's Vineyard is? Please raise your hand. Okay, so good. We have a lot who don't know. Even my Shippensburg people don't know. Oh my gosh. All right, mea culpa. Rachel's Vineyard is, don't let anybody tell you that pro-lifers only care about the unborn. That is ridiculous, and all that is bias against the pro-life movement. It's like racism, saying that all you care about is the unborn. Okay, it's like saying that somebody who works at a homeless shelter, all they care about is the homeless. That's ridiculous. So the truth of the matter is, as you know, with the pro-life movement, we are addressing the life issues across the spectrum. We have crisis pregnancy centers, but we're not only about legally protecting the unborn. We help their parents. We have the crisis pregnancy centers, all this stuff, but we also have an outreach to those who have had abortions. So it's not like, oh, you've had your abortion, now you're excommunicated, now there's nothing for you. And that's called Rachel's Vineyard. Rachel's Vineyard is a retreat weekend in which those who have had abortions come, and they are allowed to grieve, and they are allowed to deal with that with other people who've gone through the same experience, because they are not allowed to in our politically charged culture, because you're not allowed to be against abortion. You're not allowed to see it as wrong because it's been shoved down your throat as the only way out. So I have seen it's a very taxing ministry. It's very emotional. The women are crying from the time they get there to the time they leave. And that's where I really kind of came into contact more with the real pro-life issue here. And I even hate calling it an issue, because we're not really talking about an issue. We're talking about something a lot more than that. And so I bring that to my preaching, and I bring the experiences of the women that I have worked with and what they've gone through, and I bring that to bear, and I try to, I respect the confidentiality, because Rachel's Vineyard is totally confidential. We don't, I'm not going to tell anybody's names or anything, but I think on the things that I learned from that and use it, and I think it does, talking to women in those issues, it helps them a lot. So I've done 3 or 4 Rachel's Vineyard weekends. It's not something I ever grew up saying, oh, I want to do Rachel's Vineyard. It was something I was kind of pulled into, and I've found that God wants me to minister in that, as in some of the other ministries that he has called me to, has drawn me to, if you will. So I'll stop talking.
I don't really have specific stories, but I mean, I can tell you my theory on it, how I approach it at Dickinson, how I approach it in life in general. And we were talking about this before. And it has to do with Pope Paul VI, Humani Vitae. How many people have read it? How many people have not read it? Sad. Read it. It's short and really good. And at the heart of the encyclical, Pope Paul VI lists some predictions. It was written in the mid-60s. And he lists some predictions about if we keep on the path we are with science, this is what's going to happen to our society. Guess what? Every single prediction has come true. Literally not just come true, but we are currently living with the sins of the sins. So the predictions that Pope Paul VI made have come true. And because they've come true, now we're living with new sins. So at the heart of his predictions was the objectification of women. Women become a machine, they become a tool, they become something you use to produce something else. The problem is that the sin resulting from that is now everyone is a tool. Everyone is a machine and an object to please the individual. And that's the society we're living in. So the way to reverse that, and it's going to take a long time, but the way to reverse that is to help people see that they're more than that they're a gift from God. And so trying to de-objectify the planet one person at a time is kind of the way I approach it. It's a big task. It's a daunting task. But it's a task that's important and needs to be done. And so I do my best. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it makes me think of Father Dwight said that there are so many different areas that you could involve yourself in. And sometimes you just, in that moment, you have to say, well, you need to do something. You can't do everything, but you need to do something. So Scott brought this up before when, I forget her name, when the speaker was speaking, and that has to do with the politicization of what I think in the pro-life movement, it's strongly immoral. We're talking about morality, but how do you deal, especially with university students and high school students, how do you deal with I don't even know if you would call it a distinction, but emphasizing the moral dimension of the issues surrounding the dignity of life instead of it becoming politicizing, which even affects you as priests preaching, because you can be accused of being political when you are addressing a moral issue.
I was at Trinity High School a few weeks ago, and I was teaching Catholic moral theology to juniors, and a student in the class, I found out later he's a particularly annoying student, but he had a great question, and the question was this, It was a boy. It was a guy, and I don't remember. He was what? No, he was skinny and brown-haired, and I don't know. He's a convert, a recent convert to Catholicism, and he raised his hand and he asked a question, and he said, Catholics are very good at speaking out against abortion and the death penalty and things like that. Why are they so bad at speaking out against the poor? Or speaking out in favor of the poor, like supporting the poor and helping the poor. And he said, why is there not more conversations about the poor and less conversations about abortion and death penalty and things like that? And I said to him, because it's very easy to sit here and speak about these things. It's another thing to do it. And with the poor in particular, it's more a do than it is a talk. So you need to be out there doing things. Now, in Trinity's defense, there were several students who popped their hands up immediately to affirm Trinity's participation. Like, I guess you collect coats and blankets and you do things like that. And so, but he's right. In general, speaking is one thing, but if you're not doing with the speaking, then it really isn't working.
Just to kind of tag along with what Father Bender just said, Jesus, when he talks about almsgiving, he teaches us to not let our left hand know what our right hand is doing. And I think that's a teaching that's kind of forgotten, kind of what Father Bender is saying there, that we're not called to show ourselves and look how great I am, look how I'm devoted to the poor and you're not. We're not supposed to let our left hand know what our right hand is doing. We do need to advocate for the poor, but that is not as politicized as the abortion thing. And so there's nothing wrong with being passionate about homelessness or pro-life, the abortion issue, euthanasia. Again, you are called to what you are called to. You are called to do the thing that you're called to do and support everything that's good in whatever way you can in some level, but really to focus your passion and energies on an area perhaps that is not addressed yet, that is not really talked about. In terms of of course, the whole pro-life thing, it's primarily a moral issue. I had my family has had issues with my grandparents who, whenever they hear the word abortion, they think politics, and it's like that association is totally incorrect. Like, first you got to think about what it is, which is a moral issue. Then the political ramifications come after that. After you discern the moral issue at hand, then the politics comes later. And that's, in our country, I think we politicize everything. Because once Pope Francis was elected, there was all kinds of labels being thrown out there. And I'm thinking, and hearing this from the media, and I'm thinking, they don't understand that in the church, we see the Pope as a father figure, not as a politician. He's not elected by us. It's not an election. He's a father figure, and he speaks as a pastor and a father figure, not as a politician. But the media always looks at him as the Pope as a politician. They'll say Benedict was more conservative now, but Francis was more liberal. And if you're in the church and you know about the church, I don't look at it that way. He's our father figure. He's meant to be an image of God the Father, the vicar of Christ on earth. And I don't allow the media to judge and just tell me how to think. One of the things I learned at one of our first conferences here, I think from Maria Gallagher, was, and this is where we have to be really careful and discerning. The Associated Press, we know what the Associated Press is. Do we know what that is? All right, so Colleen knows what it is. Do you want to tell us what it is, Colleen?
Okay, my dad was a journalist. He was part of the Associated Press. There's a sharing of information
Yes.
and one
Right, so correct me.
association. Oh dear.
Right.
We can't hear you. Oh, okay. So my dad was a journalist, and he was part of the Associated Press. And basically, it's an association of press people. Like, it's just sharing of stories. It's a sharing of ideas, and you'll see in the Patriot News, small newspaper, stories from the Associated Press, which is you can take it and publish the stories.
And it's my understanding that it's the biggest media outlet. When you talk about reading articles on the internet, in newspapers, you're going to see most of the time Associated Press. Now, Associated Press has a style book, okay, which is, I actually just found one in our Shippensburg yard sale. We just had a yard sale, and I found an AP style book, and of course I had to pick it up. And of course my blood pressure starts going up, because the AP style book is the Bible for the Associated Press. This is how you are to write your articles. These are the terms you are to use. These are the terms you are to avoid. And I think most people don't know this. I've preached it here at St. Pat's. I got to preach it in Shippensburg. I haven't done it yet. But in the AP style book, I was able to open it up, and it's like a dictionary, and it has these topics, and it says, use this term, don't use that term. You look up abortion. Guess what it says? It says, don't use the term pro-life. Use anti-abortion. Okay? There's no bias, though, right? Associated Press is totally unbiased. That's what it says in there. Do not use the term pro-life. Use the term anti-abortion. And then it says something like, there was more added to it. There was another thing they didn't want you to say. They wanted you to say this instead. Say pro-choice instead of I forget. Instead of pro-abortion. Oh yeah, instead of pro-abortion, you're supposed to say pro-choice. Okay, so there's a clear bias there, and we don't realize a lot of times how we are being formed by the news we read, by the things we hear on the radio, and we are being formed to think a certain way by the terminology, the very ways they express it. And that's the battle. That is the battleground, is how you talk about it, is how you the terms that you use. If you're somebody who goes through your whole life, like my grandparents, who always watched the news just like, so everybody else, and all they ever heard was the anti-abortion people, the anti-abortion people. All they hear is that pro-life people are against. It's always negative. Of course, we never talk about ourselves that way. We talk about ourselves as being pro-life, and we talk about a wide range of issues. So I think the big key is discerning the truth behind all of the lies, and a lot of the lies are in the realm of the terminology. We're not talking about what they say propositionally, but the very terms themselves, there needs to be a reform there. So anyway, I'll get off my bandwagon.
It's really hard for him to do, but
So as campus ministers, as campus priests, I would assume pretty much maybe Sunday Mass is like your most visible, where you're most visible. And so what would you say would be other ways that you as priests can minister to students in order to, change hearts and minds about the dignity of life?
The way, basically, it's very simple. It's the way the gospel has been spread for centuries, which is personal relationships. I feel that our students today, and I noticed this, I think I would say I noticed it both at Dickinson and at Shippensburg, but it's a little different in how it happens. But I think young people are overprogrammed. Everything, they are programmed from kindergarten, pre-K, until the end of college. And what I learned when I was at Dickinson, I remember I asked her one year, trying things and failing and things like that. And I asked the students at the end of the year, like, what was the most memorable part of this whole year? And you know what they told me? When you went out to eat with us one night. That's what they remembered. And at that, when we went out to eat, and it was random, it wasn't planned. It was a random thing, like after something, I don't know if it was mass or a concert we did or something, I went out to eat with some of them. And what they do is they open up and then they ask questions, which I get a chance to, things that they're interested in. It's personal relationships. That's where evangelization happens, that's where conversion happens, that's where the world is changed. And so I think even more so now, because everything's a program now. And what is completely different from that is, and outside of that, is the random personal relationship side. And that's where I need to do that more on campus. What I'm trying to do now is, I live by myself, I don't have a cook. So this is a couple different advantages to this. I go up to the dining hall and I eat there. And so I'm exposed to the students, and they'll come up and they'll see me with my collar. Sometimes I get weird looks, but someone will come up and say, "Can you pray for me?" and stuff like that. I don't have to buy food as much. I don't have to worry about cooking for myself, and I get to minister to the students, and develop those personal relationships. But it's all in relationships.
amen.
I hear Dickinson has a really good dining facility.
They do.
Just saying. I forget what I was going to ask next. It had to do with the forming of, the greatest obstacles to forming relationships. I hear you saying some of it is just being overprogrammed, having too much to do and not being able to slow down. Can you think of other obstacles, especially for college students, even for high school students?
I can't speak for Shippensburg, but at Dickinson, there's a lot of stress to do well and to perform well and to exceed over everyone else. And so that stress, and I'm sure it's the same at Ship, and so that stress causes, I don't really have time for that because I have to be doing this. And it's not so much as a program, but it's just I don't really have time for that because I need to be studying, or I've studied so much now I just need to, veg in front of a TV and play Xbox, and I can't really focus on anything else. And so I think that's at least.
Amen.
We know each other too well.
This isn't one of the questions, but Father Dwight mentioned Humanae Vitae. I'm sorry, Father Bender mentioned Humanae Vitae, and I would like to suggest that when you read it, you should read Janet Smith's translation of it. Janet Smith is a seminary professor, and she has some really awesome, you can get them through onemoresoul.org, She has some really great, she gave a talk about contraception, why you shouldn't use contraception. It's totally down to earth, and it makes sense. You know, I'm 56. I've already raised children. We live by the church's teachings. I still read it and love it, totally love it. So I would like to ask the Venerable Fathers, would you have any suggestions for good reading material for our audience?
Yeah. Okay, besides Humanae Vitae, Janet Smith is really good, and you can find her talks audio, not just, like, you can find printed and PDFs, but you can also find audio. She's a very dynamic speaker. I've probably listened to Cobb's Contraception, Why Not, at least a dozen times, and I could listen to it probably a dozen more. It's just really good. And so you can find her stuff on audio, and then, so listen to that, and then you read Humanae Vitae.
Yes, onemoresoul.org. Great. Janet Smith is awesome. She has 3 different versions of the talk. She has the original version, and because things are changing, she kind of, what I love about her is she updates, and there's a 3rd version now. It's good to listen to all 3 versions if you can, because you also see not only the truth of Humanae Vitae, but how the society has changed just in the 20 years that she started her talk. It's just amazing the train ride that we're all on in this world, and it's kind of scary to think about where it's going. Except that we know that the second coming is going to take care of all that. One thing I wanted to go back and about the relationship issue and how about getting students involved as much. I think the biggest challenge for us priests is to empower lay people like you to use your priesthood, because you are all by baptism made priests in a different sense than ordained ministry, but that you are out there also as priests, and in other words, witnessing to the faith, and you're making those connections with that personal relationship, so that it's not just, I'm one person, and I can't expend all my resources you can't reach, we have 7,000 students at Shippensburg University. There's no way I'm going to be able to meet all of them. But if we can empower, train lay people like you who are priests by baptism, priest, prophet, and king, to be a light on campus in the world, and they can look at you and say, why are you so Catholic? Why do you get so much joy from your faith, from your relationship with Jesus, from your church? And then you can minister to them in ways that I can't. Right now at our campus, we have a missionary from Honduras. His name's Nick Higgins. It's a long story as to why he's here right now, but he came and he started doing theology of the body. You've heard of theology of the body? Everyone who has not heard of theology of the body? Okay, good. We've got that. So we've been doing theology of the body on campus, and I've just noticed that Nick was able to reach students that I wasn't able to, because his personality and their personality gelled more, and that doesn't bother me. I'm not like, don't be messing with my turf. Like, I don't care. I mean, he's out there. He's getting to certain students that I wasn't able to connect with as well on a personal level. He's been able to do it, and the ministry is going to build because of that. Because everyone's charisms, everyone's gifts are being used, and people are being drawn because they're seeing the Holy Spirit not just in one person, not just in the guy who's celebrating the liturgy, but they're seeing it in others, in other people who are devoted to the Lord, perhaps even more than I am. And that's where the transformation of the culture is going to happen. If we expect the clergy to do it, good luck. We're not going to be able to do it on our own. We need you guys in the trenches to be the light to the world everywhere in all your relationships, and get into those dark places. Talk to those women who are about to have abortions and see what we can do. And if you want to come, if you need money to help the woman not get the abortion, come to the parish office. we have a charity account. I'm willing to hand over money to save the life of a baby.
Okay, more resources, because I thought of them while he was talking. Rerum Novarum is a great read. It's an encyclical by Leo XIII. It was over 100 years ago it was written, but it's still worth the read. Gaudium et Spes, which is the document of Vatican II, is a great read. And Veritatis Splendor is a great read. Those are all, believe it or not, pro-life reads that are very good.
Rerum Novarum. It's Leo XIII, right? Yeah. It's 1870s, I think, 1890s. Then there's a 100-year anniversary to Rerum Novarum. There's a 50th, a 75, and 100. Yeah. Then also Evangelium Vitae. Some of the so Humanae Vitae. Then John Paul II wrote Evangelium Vitae because new pro-life issues came up because of technology. And I think he deals with one question that had come up about ectopic pregnancies. I think he deals with that in there. Evangelium Vitae deals with some of the newer pro-life issues that were never known about before. So
they're mostly papal encyclicals that you're recommending. Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid of them is what I'm trying to say, because they're pretty interesting to read. I see hands. Mary?
I just had a question about, since you are both campus ministers, pro-life, I know, isn't just abortion, it's about respecting life in all aspects, and especially now, this is just an example, but a lot of racial issues on campus. Do you either A, gear your homilies towards certain political issues that are going on right now in campuses around the world, and in social issues that the campus might be thinking about, and B, do you tend to take a stance on those? Because I'm just curious, like, how college kids get their Catholic say on issues, especially like race right now, racism in general.
Okay, that's a whole, I mean, the issues occurring at Dickinson is a whole other conversation we don't have time for. But I can tell you that to be honest, these past few months at Dickinson, just because I'm new there, my homilies have been very personal oriented, because it's that individual relationship I want to build. And I want them to see that I'm open to that and that I'm there for them. And so my homilies have been very relational in that perspective, because I'm trying to build as good a relationship as I can in that setting. That in mind, though, so I'm trying to debunk the objectivity of the world and see themselves as individuals again. And so that plays a part of it, especially in the current issues that are going on at Dickinson. So,
I primarily, when I preach, and I think Father Bender is probably the same way, the primary purpose of the homily is to apply what Jesus' message is in the liturgy, especially in the gospel reading, to today. So my challenge always is, first of all, to understand what Jesus wants to say, because the way I look at preaching, and I know Father Bender's the same way, is it's not what I want to say, it's what does Jesus want to tell these people. And I pray constantly, Jesus, give me the words to say, because I don't want you to hear my message. I want you to hear what Jesus wants to say to you. So what I've noticed is Jesus talks about certain things, and other things he doesn't talk about. So then the challenge is like, I mean, Jesus doesn't talk about racism. Now, how can I apply what he's saying to what's going on today? That becomes my challenge. And I do, when the Lord gives me the right words to talk about a specific issue and relating it to the gospel, then I go for it. I felt called to talk about the terrorism, the attacks in Paris last Sunday, and I felt that I could connect it with the gospel reading, and particularly the issue of praying for terrorists, which some people didn't want to hear that, but we're called to pray for their conversion. We're called to love our enemies. So the Lord led me in that direction. racism has not been a big issue in Shippensburg University, so I haven't felt compelled to talk about that there. Although I have addressed racism in other preaching that I have done. So.
Jim.
Last question. This will have to be the last question.
Really? Okay. Jim has the last question.
It's the last question given to somebody else. My was just homosexuality on college campus and high school is a huge issue, and since the whole faith hangs together, and the old, people will tend to, as they live, they will tend to believe. Their beliefs will tend to conform to how they live. So given, and it's big at college, high schools too, it's being seen, homosexual actions are being seen as a basic human right. Do you ever connect those two and address them in any way together?
Oh, okay, wow. A few weeks ago when I was at Trinity High School, does it sound like an earlier answer? I addressed it in a very blunt, Catholic teaching kind of way. Long story short, there was a lot of shocked students in the room. There were a lot of changed ideas in the room because of things I was saying and the fact that they made sense. So yeah, you're right, it is a big issue. At Dickinson, it's ginormous. The Religious Life Department offices, the umbrella that I fall under, guess where their offices are? They're in the same building as the LGBTQ community. So I see them all the time. Like, those two communities have been not forced, but now share offices together. So you can see the effect that would have on a campus when they see those two departments kind of living together. And so, yeah, it's a big issue. And I don't know quite how I'm going to address it at Dickinson, but at least at Trinity I made a little bit of a headway, I think. So, but...
When the Supreme Court decision came out this summer, I felt compelled to preach on it. I did. There wasn't, I think a lot of people liked it. And what I say, when we talk about that issue in particular, because we are pro-life, and we want, even in the pro-life movement, we want to work with even gay people who are in homosexual relationships. We want to work with them in the pro-life movement as well. If we can unite behind and fight for life, even with people we totally disagree with on other issues, we need to do that as well. So on the one hand, we want to be open to working with them, kind of like what Beth was saying, regardless of that issue. However, and the other thing, when we're talking about preaching about it, I feel that the priest has to be given, again, the right words and the right way of doing it, because you can do a lot of harm by saying the wrong things. I work with parishioners who have same-sex attractions, and basically what I do is I focus not so much on the evil, but I focus on the virtue. In other words, what I did this summer is I said the gay issue has been it's being framed as a minority issue and civil rights. It's being framed as the gay people are a minority who are being oppressed. Okay, that we know that. That's how it's being portrayed in the media. That's that. What I said is I want to talk about two minorities within a minority. And one of those minorities was the Catholics with same-sex attractions who embraces the church's teaching and want to live it, and who I admire. And I admire because they love God more than their desires. They love God more than anything else. That's why they live that way. They're a minority. And who's going to stand up for them? That's the church's job. And then there's another minority, but I won't go into that because we're running out of time. So.
Colleen.
Yeah, go ahead, Colleen.
I just kind of had a curiosity question, because since I've I'm a girl who's been through 12 years of Catholic schooling, so you could ask me pretty much anything, and I'd probably know the answer, except for seminary, because that's a ignorance part for girls in Catholic school. So I was just wondering, in seminary, how is this question taught to teach about, like, just like how have you been prepared for it? You know how Beth was talking about, like, how they prepare people. Like, how are you prepared for it? And especially from, like, the person to person, or, like, dealing with women.
You mean, okay, so I can tell you at St. Vincent's Seminary, I can only speak for them. I can't speak for Rome. At St. Vincent's Seminary, we have 4 classes on moral theology. We have Introduction to Moral Theology, Catholic Sexual Ethics, then we have Biomedical Ethics, and then we have Difficult Moral Questions. So we have 4 classes on topics that we've been talking about all morning long. Now, how to deal with women, that's a whole other... We at St. Vincent's take a 1 year, actually it's 3 semesters, called Pastoral Counseling. Within that class, which is, by the way, taught by a rabbi, but a very good class, where those issues are addressed within that class. So I can't speak for the NAC.
Suffice it to say, St. Vincent's does a much better job than what I got. That's basically all you need to know. I mean, much, much better job. And that's it.
Gabriel, can I just, I think you need to just add one little thing to what you said about faithful, same-sex attracted Catholics and the way that they feel called to live, because not everybody might know what the church is asking of a man or a woman who has same-sex attraction.
Chastity. That's really, they're called to chastity. Just like everyone who's not married in this room.
Right. It's the church's ethic is consistent. We're all called to chastity, even married people, but with the only difference is marital chastity is a little different than everybody else's chastity. So one of the things I said was, hey, is it wrong of God to ask somebody to live their life in a chaste way, to have these desires, but to say no to them? Is it wrong to make somebody to create somebody and they get these desires and then say, well, you have to stay chaste your whole life? Well, then I say, hello, I'm not married, okay? And he calls people to celibacy and not just priests.
Well, thank you very much. Before this thing gets to the next speaker, I'd like to pass out something, which is a questionnaire for you to fill. Could you pass these out? It's about your response, your opinions on today's program. So if you get this back to us by close of business around 2 o'clock, that'll be fine. In addition, are there any teachers here who would like continuing education credit? Mary Lou? Okay. Contact Jim Gauntis. Have you met Jim? And he'll take care of you. Okay? Good. Third item is, thank you. Sure. Okay. I want to keep in touch with you as much as we can. We have an extensive mailing list, email mailing list, and we share a lot of information through that mailing list. Some of you are on that list, some of you are not.